Hello, everyone. Gooey Louie back after some time in jail, and here to talk about something that I've been meaning to talk about SCP. I've been into SCP, but now I'm pretty much at my peak of understanding its scaling, and I just really want to talk about it. The problem with that is where I would start because there's just a lot to cover. I have loads of ideas, and I decided to start off small, starting off with something relatively small before going on to bigger and much bigger bullshit. It's just a bit more complex. I'm really excited to talk about these things with you guys and get this stuff out there because the vast majority of content talking about SCP over here on YouTube is just poorly researched garbage made by dishonest people, both the down players and wankers. Today, I will be going over the power of a pretty well known entry for SCP-001, S. Andrew Swann's proposal, pretty much the beginning of all metafictional content on the SCP Wiki, with all other metafictional articles like SCP-3999, SCP-2747, SCP-3812, SCP-3309, and many others. If you need a refresher as to what the article is all about, or are just new to the whole thing, there is no definitive Tier 0 or SCP-001. There are just many proposals written by different authors, and one of and which ones are true are dependent on what canon you're reading. S. Andrew Swann's proposal is all about the SCP Foundation discovering that they are nothing but fiction being written by a collection of horror writers, which are meant to be us. The writers of the SCP Wiki are their gods, the very source of all anomalies, and the creators of the SCP Foundation's entire reality. Now, as for how this video will go, I will stick to the original mythology created by S. Andrew Swann, disregarding the works of other authors unless they are directly relevant. So, I will be using the original article of S. Andrew Swann's proposal, other articles written by Andrew that would be relevant, and whatever article is directly mentioned here, like with a cross link. Anything other than that won't be covered. If you want good SCP skilling, which is admittedly hard to come by, I suggest going onto Alt Battles Wiki, which is honestly the only true voice of reason in the hellscape that is SCP Powerscaling. As I said before, the premise of the article is that the reality of the SCP Foundation are the creations of a bunch of horror writers from a higher reality. They see the SCP Foundation's level of reality as fiction and are manipulating said reality through their writings, with the various anomalies that the SCP Foundation deal with being their creations. So generally speaking, the horror writers exist on a plane of existence higher than that of the SCP Foundation's universe. But how far beyond? They can actually get a sense of their superiority using the materials given to us in the article and other articles written by Andrew Swann. In truth, their level of existence cannot be reached through higher spatial dimensions, and we have, as of now, two examples of this. Also written by S. Andrew Swann, we have He Who Made Light and He Who Made Dark, two godlike entities that created and represent all light and darkness across the universe and other parallel realities. They're described as extra-dimensional entities, and an item directly linked to them can be used to access higher order spatial dimensions. These entities are higher dimensional, beyond the typical three you or I are familiar with, but despite this higher dimensionality, they are still things that exist within the Foundation's level of reality, very much unlike the horror writers, which are above reality entirely. We also have SCP 682, which is one of the many SCPs mentioned in the original article. SCP 682 in his original canon, so anything made by Dr. Gears, is a lower projection of an extra-dimensional entity that exists on its own time, space, and matter. But just like he who made light and he who made dark, he is no closer to reaching the authors in existence and is very much still subject to their wills. They're imperceivable even to beings like them. On top of all of that, when compared to something like SCP 140, a book that is capable of rewriting and manipulating the timeline of the SCP Foundation's reality, the authors are described as something infinitely greater. So the horror writers of S. Andrew Swann's proposal exist above the SCP Foundation's world in such a way that it cannot be reached through spatial dimensions, and they see it wholly as non-existent fictional media. This is a textbook example of a qualitative superiority, a type of superiority between two things where the greater thing is beyond any and all quantitative measurements of the lesser thing, which in our case encapsulates physical stuff like spatial dimensions. Or, in other words, the authors talked about in S. Andrew Swann's proposal are beings that reach the outerverse level ranges of power. They transcend spatial dimensions with higher dimensional entities that are unfathomably strong in their own right, still existing beneath them like regular three-dimensional entities. Them being above the SCP Foundation's level like this further makes sense with other anomalies like SCP 354, which is one of the anomalies listed in the article alongside SCP 682. SCP 354 for its exploration log showcases a different plane of existence with its own rules of time, space, time, magnetism, and physics. So the authors can't be something like a parallel universe of some sort if they are beyond adjacent spaces like this too. The authors don't have anything in regards to speed. They would just inherently be either immeasurable or irrelevant speed, depending on what speed system you use. So let's just get into their abilities. The main central thing with the horror writers is their control over reality. It is explicitly said that reality is in a constant state of shifting flux because of their writings, which alone gives them reality warping and plot manipulation, but there is more. The authors primarily use their ability to rewrite history itself, with them being able to not only rewrite the history of individuals, both SCPs and people, but are capable of rewriting entire decades of history at a whim. This ability even allows them to erase things from existence. So, with their reality warping, they also have causality manipulation and existence erasure. The laws of physics are also something bound to their control, with them just allowing things to ignore the laws of physics entirely. Alongside this, if their creation of SCP-62 and 354 have anything to go by, they're also capable of just creating and manipulating entirely new and alien laws of time, space, magnetism, physics, and states of matter. So, some pretty good law manipulation and other applications like physics, time, space, matter manipulation, so on. Normally, I wouldn't do this, but I would feel dirty if I didn't at least mention this. The horror authors are really powerful, but they do have one glaring weakness that isn't common with entities of their level. As godlike as they are, the SCP Foundation has noted that they are cognitively identical to human beings. So theoretically, they could be susceptible to mimetic effects from the SCP Foundation's reality. If you happen to not know, mimetic effects are anomalies that are capable of influencing or manipulating the mind. So, in a battle against the authors, it would be theoretically be possible for mind-based abilities from lower entities to work on them. It should be made clear that this is all in theory with nothing concrete behind it. We don't actually see this happen in the article, so while it would be something important to bring up, it is mostly uncertain. And really, if you were in similar circumstances, this kind of thing would do more harm than good because you're basically destabilizing the thing that sustains the space that you're occupying. If the author were to die, then the entire universe you're existing in also dies, which is exactly why the Foundation didn't do this. This also just isn't a factor with extended canon iterations of the authors, with things like the Proxyverse within the Meta Foundation model, all of which have their own unique explanations that I won't be going into today. To recap, the horror writers of S. Andrew Swann's proposal are Outerverse level, both by Versus Buzz Wiki and Character Steps and Profiles Wiki standards. In layman's terms, they exist beyond all the physical dimensions that build up beings like us. Anything from zero dimensionality to infinite sets of spatial dimensions are entirely irrelevant to them. Or, in even simpler terms, if the character in question is anything beneath Versus Bazwiki's low outerversal rating or CSAP's high hyperversal rating, the authors just immediately stomp them. They possess reality warping and plot manipulation, which spirals out into other abilities like law manipulation, causality manipulation, and existence erasure. That'll be it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I am planning on making other SCP videos. Next one will probably be about SCP-3812, which basically takes the concept of S. Andrew Swann's proposal and brings it to the utmost extreme. If you want quality scaling of SCP, I would highly recommend checking out the people on Alt Battles Wiki, who aren't blinded by stupid old Reddit metas, nostalgia, or other forms of favoritism. You can also check out my personal SCP scaling, both of which you can find in the description. I'll see you all later in like 2 or 3 months.